You've heard it said that you sometimes can't see the forest for the trees. It's especially important in Austin that we have this overall sense of the religious community's life. One of the purposes of Austin Faith Dialogue, and today we have some folks that are going to help us get that overview. So stay tuned.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
Hello, I'm Richard Thompson, in behalf of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, bringing you this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. So happens that we have today an opportunity to examine this sponsoring organization of Austin Faith Dialogue. Austin Metropolitan Ministries is the one interreligious group that can give us an overall sense of what's happening in Austin in terms of the faith communities. We're having today the president of AMM, Jim Mayfield, who is not only the president of AMM, but the pastor of the Terrytown United Methodist Church. Jim, we're glad to have you here.
Good to be here.
Sarah Heddleston, in from Michigan to work here in Austin, sacrificing herself here in the wintertime to work with the Homeless Commission that is one of the programs of AMM. And Sarah, we're glad to have you.
Thanks.
Give us a kind of a specific example of one of Austin Metropolitan Ministries programs. Well, Jim, let's give you a chance to give us an overall picture of what AMM does, and through that maybe get a perspective on what's happening in the religious community in the metropolitan area otherwise.
The religious community in Austin has grown in its diversity. It's certainly grown in numbers, but it's also grown in diversity over the last couple of decades, 3 decades anyway. And so that it's not just a Christian and Jewish organization as it once was, but we also now have some Hindu congregations, some Buddhist groups, some Muslim congregations that are involved in it. So it is truly an interreligious organization, and there are 3 basic purposes, might be a good way to identify them, all of which are designed to try to bring healing and hope and to build a community between the interreligious groups for the sake of the whole community of Austin.
Okay.
And those 3 purposes have to do with helping to have understanding, trust, cooperation through conversations, through worship services. The Thanksgiving service, for example, would be one. There are interreligious dialogues that are going on is another way that's going.
And you mentioned not only Christian groups, but Islamic groups?
That's
Hindu,
correct. That's correct.
Jewish?
Catherine Solomon is the chairperson of that interreligious commission.
All right.
And while I have personally not been schedule-wise able to participate with them, the word I get is that it is very fascinating. One of the things they're doing is they're having meetings and they're inviting individuals, laity and clergy from the various religious groups, to come in and share their own faith journey from their own religious heritage or tradition, as a way of learning about each other as persons, but also learning about each other as faith.
So in a way, unless there was an Austin Metropolitan Ministries, you wouldn't have, presumably, that kind of dialogue going on.
I'm not aware of any other agency in Austin that has the potential of bringing together the various interreligious groups to build that kind of trust.
And I think that the Thanksgiving service that you mentioned, that's the only one in town that is for community-wide.
It is. And what is, I think, especially meaningful in that particular experience is that we don't water down so that we're at the lowest common denominator. We gather to thank God, and the representatives of the various Jewish communities offer thanks to God in their traditional ways. The Hindu do it in their traditional way,
Right.
Buddhists their ways, conservative Protestants in their ways, liberal Protestants their ways,
Sure.
Roman. So that it's a service in which people come together and in their own ways, in the presence of one another, offer their thanksgiving
All
to
right.
God.
So that's the first purpose, the interreligious relations.
Yes.
All right.
A second purpose is very much related to that, and also is building trust and healing. But it's the putting that into physical action.
All right. What are some examples of that?
For example,
Homeless Commission.
Homeless Commission is one. Hands-on housing is an illustration of that. The
Community mentoring.
Community mentoring, fantastic program.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had John Williams on yet.
We're going to have him on soon.
For those who don't know the Community Mentoring Program, it's a program that relates healthy, wholesome adults with adolescents who have gotten in trouble with the law in nonviolent ways, but are youth that are certainly headed the wrong direction, and it pairs up adults with those youth.
Right. And then you've got a fairly new program in regard to the refugee settlement, haven't you?
The refugee settlement program, which is a combination, we are working with both Episcopal Organization and Church World Service with that. We have, within 12 months, we will have brought in approximately 80 families. At least that was the original goal. I know our particular congregation has dealt with 2 of those families. Most of those right now are still coming out of the Kosovo-Bosnia
Right,
area.
right. I remember the Kosovo fundraising effort that took place so after that conflict was going on in the spring.
And the community responded very well.
Right.
There is an ongoing need, of course, for those funds.
Okay, so what's the third purpose?
The third purpose is...
By the way, before you leave the second one, there is
Okay.
another program of AMM.
there are many other programs, yes.
Like Austin Faith Dialogue itself.
Austin Faith Dialogue itself, the Crop Walk, and several others.
Right.
Austin Faith Dialogue is a very significant factor in helping to create trust and understanding of what's going on.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's worthy interruption. The third type of activities are centered around advocacy. We are not an in your face, in front of the TV kind of advocacy. Ours tends to be a quieter and more behind the scene kind of mediation advocacy on behalf of those with the least power and the weakest voice in our community, trying to deal with the structures within the community.
Right, right. Okay, well, I think that overall view sets us up, Sarah, for you to zero in on something very specific, and that is the Homeless Commission dealing with that part of the population that certainly has some of the greatest needs. You've come to Austin. Do you see the needs here? Describe the homeless needs for us.
Definitely. And just 4 months working through AMM at the Austin Resource Center for the Homeless, I've been in contact with many individuals who have been homeless for years or for just a short period of time, and the variety of needs is just so broad that there isn't just one organization that can fill all those needs. And the Homeless Commission, which is a program of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, can help with that and kind of pulling together all of the different faith traditions, religious traditions from people from different congregations who are interested in helping the homeless can pull together resources and people to try to meet those very different needs of the homeless community.
Now, you mentioned the Austin Resource Center for the Homeless, or ARCH, as it's commonly called.
Right.
Isn't that located close to where the City Hall was or is?
The building where I guess you used to pay your light bill, it's right in that building. It's on 701 West 5th Street.
On 5th Street,
and it just opened at that location in August, this past August.
Okay, so that is a relatively new location. Now, you represent AMM in this. You're I understand, a VEST worker that is like sort of like a VISTA worker in
Right.
terms of being a volunteer from this. You were out of college last spring, and here you are doing this. And one thing I've heard about, and maybe you could help us get a little better picture of, is the weather has turned colder. Not like Michigan, but still cold enough that you
Right.
have, what do they call it, freeze nights?
Freeze nights.
How does that work?
When the temperature is going to drop at 32 or below, different churches who have agreed to serve as shelter sites will open up and welcome homeless people in to have a hot meal and a place to sleep on nights when it's freezing. And that's a program, a coordinated effort that was started by the Homeless Commission.
Okay, so if we're saying AMM is helping address the homeless issue in a unique or particular way, that's an example of it. And Jim, what's your feeling or impression of this particular aspect of the organization?
The feedback that I get from those pastors who are involved in that is that it is certainly a needed ministry, that when the doors open, there are many on those cold nights who are looking for a place of shelter. But it has also been a very significant ministry for those providing the ministry, if that makes any sense at
Sure.
all. That those who are participating in the providing of the meals and providing of the services find themselves enriched. So it's not just a one-way street.
Have you found that too, Sarah, from what folks have said to you?
Definitely. Even we've had, I think, 3 freeze nights so far, and the volunteers from community or from churches have just really the chance just to be in that ministry and to meet people, and it's just enrich them as well. So.
What churches are making their facilities available for that purpose?
This year, St. Austin's Catholic Church, University Baptist Church, St. George's Episcopal Church, University Presbyterian Church, and First Unitarian Church have all opened their doors.
And isn't Central Presbyterian downtown? No, in the past it's been involved in that as well.
Right.
Okay. Well, I think that we're going to have to take a break here for just in a few seconds. But when we come back, what I'd like for us to be able to do is not only look to the past, but to the future. What we're hoping maybe will happen during this first year of the new century and the new millennium. And I think, too, that a little bit of the history, too. We kind of skirted that. We'll look to the past to that extent as well. But right now, we're going to take a break. We're going to give everybody a chance to catch their collective breath, including those of us here on the set, and look forward to welcoming you folks back in just a few minutes. 1 minute, as a matter of fact. Welcome back to Austin Faith Dialogue, where today we are taking a close look at the organization that helps put us on the air here, the Austin Metropolitan Ministries, and to get an overall sense of what is happening in the interreligious community of this capital city of Texas. We have the president of AMM, Jim Mayfield, and we also have Sarah Heddleston, who is working with the Homeless Commission, one of the programs of AMM. Now, in the first half, we were kind of getting an overall picture of the programs. Let's just go back in time for a moment. of how AMM started and where you think it's going to be going.
Okay. History short form. It started in 1944 as basically a Protestant Christian organization. The article I read, interesting enough, said in 1941 there were 60 churches in Austin.
Oh, wow.
And 12 of those Protestant churches went together. Then in the 1960s, following Vatican II, the organization went through some changes and became an Austin Conference of Churches, and the Roman Catholics came in.
Okay.
In the 1970s, another organization, Austin Metro Ministries, which was a social service kind of ministries, was operating parallel. And in the 80s, those two organizations merged and became what we now know as Austin Metropolitan Ministries. And the director that we have had for a little over 10 years now,
Since the beginning.
Yeah, Pat Flood is just an amazing person, and I am in some grief because Pat is going to retire. Well-earned, deserved retirement, but we are really going to miss him. He has been a guiding spirit, an amazing, gentle advocate for the poor and those who are in need, and is one of the smoothest diplomats I've ever worked with for the sake of good.
So when will his retirement take effect?
The precise date is not set. It's going to be related to when the search committee finds a successor. So it could be as early as the next month or two. It could be no later, though, than the middle of the year.
I see. And you're having an annual meeting?
We have an annual meeting coming up the next to the last Sunday in January, the Sunday that's not the Super Bowl Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
At Riverbend Church. Bishop McCarthy's our speaker, and we will be honoring Pat Flood as well as celebrating the ministries, not only that are going on right now, but celebrating the ministries of Pat as he has helped shape this.
Well, this is appropriate time
organization.
to give thanks for his leadership.
Yes, yes.
And to look ahead as well.
Yeah.
And now, Sarah, looking ahead with the Homeless Commission, what do you hope will happen by the time you work till mid-year?
Until August is when I.
Okay. What would you like to have happen with the Homeless Commission by the time you leave?
Well, right now I've seen the Homeless Commission develop different programs that have worked with really tangible needs. They've developed a clothing closet at the Resource Center that is open every Monday and gives out clothing on an emergency basis, and as well as the cold weather shelters. Something that I would like to see happen in the future is relationships forming between congregation members and the homeless, something less tangible than a material need and more relationship building between the homeless community and the actual congregation members.
Can you really call the homeless population a community?
Well, after working at the Resource Center, you do see a lot of the people who come in are there day after day, and there is a sort of community that has developed there. People come in, the staff knows people by name, they know us, and there really is a sense of community there.
Okay. Well, that's, I think, one of the values of having that resource.
One of the interesting human interest stories, our youth group was involved in serving a meal.
Now, this is your
at our church,
Terrytown
our local
United Methodist
Church youth group. And one of the stories that they came back that was very moving for the youth, and then for all of us as they shared it with us, was that particular meal was primarily a sandwich meal, and one of the persons was wanting more than what was being handed out for their share, and the young woman, high school girl, was a little put off by that, but went ahead and gave him the extra sandwich.
Okay.
As they were leaving a few minutes later, as our youth were leaving a few minutes later, what they discovered was that he had taken the sandwich, to his handicapped friend who was outside, who wasn't able to come back in,
Right.
so that there was a sense of compassion and community that exists in and among the homeless. Sometimes we, particularly who are in the middle class and live in comfortable suburbs, dehumanize the homeless.
You know, another example along that line, we did a show in 1998 that had to do with the arts, the art program that homeless folks are involved in. And I can remember now, just came back, that these people would help each other in terms of, at Arch, I think they had some of that. I don't know if that's still going on there, but at that time there was a program there. University Methodist Church had part of it. And I visited University Methodist Church when that was going on, and you could see the people interacting there in a way that, that did bespeak community.
And there was very powerful, poignant poetry that was published through the Homeless Commission and one of your predecessors, what, a year ago? I think it was, maybe 18 months ago.
Well, you know, this is one thing that I think we stereotype folks who are homeless. We forget that most of them are women with children, and that it's not always a down-and-out population, probably less often than not. People that could have, you know, there, but for the grace of God, go I. And have you gotten to know people? Have you seen here, you've learned something that you didn't know when you came?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what would be your perception of how this ministry has made a difference in your own life?
Just being able to form relationships with many people who are homeless. A lot of my stereotypes of homeless people have been, you know, totally just blown away by the stories I've heard, the people I've met who, you know, we do forget sometimes that the thing that makes someone homeless is that it's that they just don't have a home. And there really, you know, isn't a lot of difference between, you know, us who do have homes and those who don't.
Right.
And just people are on the streets for many different reasons. And I think that's where the stereotypes start to fall, is that when you actually meet people and discover why they're on the streets, and that, you know, they have hopes and dreams and talents and just the same as we do. And that's just something that has been a real blessing, to be able to meet people and just and form the relationship and hear their stories and learn that, you know.
And I think that, you know, you've got the Salvation Army, you've got the Foundation for the Homeless with its Interfaith Hospitality Network. You have a number of these outreaches that are going on that you're not trying to duplicate. But it sounds like this personal relationship side is something that AMM is in a good position to foster. And by the way, Jim, it suddenly dawned on me, I hadn't thought about it to just this one. You've got another year to go as president, don't you?
That's right.
So does Bill Clinton. So he's looking for a legacy, right?
Yes.
Are you looking for a legacy?
Well, as a matter of fact, I am.
Okay.
One of the gaps that I am very much aware of is that there is no forum for clergy from the various religious organizations to come together and know one another. There used to be the old Conference of Churches or Ministerial Alliance kind of organization where they would get together periodically for a meal and a program. And the meal wasn't that great, and usually the program was just sort of so-so. But what it really provided was an opportunity for the clergy to meet one another and know one another and to begin to build some relationship. I found that very important in the late 1970s. At that time, I was pastor of Northwest Hills United Methodist Church.
Okay.
And busing came in.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the only time in the 20-something years I've been in the Austin area that I personally could really envision some violence happening in our community. And there was a pretty widespread concern. Because of contacts that had been made in that old structure, there was a lot of behind-the-scenes telephoning between clergy about how to strategize and deal with their own areas and cooperate with other areas to try to bring calmness and sanity.
You'd like to restore some of that.
And I would like to The old model won't work now.
Okay.
But I would like us to try to come up with another model that would. We have tried one avenue in 1999, and we'll continue it in the 2000.
Okay.
And that is where we bring in civic leaders and then invite the religious leaders to come and visit with them. For example, we had Mayor Watson.
Yeah, I was going to say, this whole interface between the interfaith or interreligious community and the city and public agencies, that's part of your
That's
purpose,
part of the purpose. And of course, we're involved in that anyway. But what I was talking about this last few seconds has been some kind of opportunity that brings the clergy together.
But if they meet the mayor, and have you, in your advocacy, have you found, for instance, on the Homeless Commission, have you been doing advocacy in behalf of the homeless with the city or the county?
Well, just the Resource Center being a city-owned building, I would say that with the people from different congregations working with the homeless, and that's a bringing of the city and the interreligious community together to work, towards homeless issues.
There's this CAN, Community Action Network, that I think, isn't AMM still involved in that?
It's involved with that, yes.
That involves city, county, and other...
Yes, and it
private.
does, yeah. And that's involved in more active kind of stuff. Back to what I was talking about a moment ago, it's really not... It's an opportunity for... well, let me just describe what happened when the mayor came. The mayor came and shared his hopes and dreams and the problems that he saw for the city.
All right.
He got some response from the religious... The clergy that were there. Mm-hmm. The clergy also had an opportunity to ask him questions about a variety of things. So it was an effective interaction where the mayor received some information, perhaps, and insights and feeling tones that he didn't have. Certainly the clergy did. But my primary concern was that it was a forum that got that group of clergy, so that over the coffee and donuts and juice, they were able to begin to get to know one another across their religious lines.
And that wouldn't happen unless AMM provided a forum like that.
Yes, there's no other forum available.
Well, I hope that legacy does take place before the year 2001, Jim, and we can remember you're helping to do that. And thank you for giving that leadership to the organization this year. And I think last year you were also president.
That's correct.
And and thank you for coming to Austin, Texas, and helping us with our particular problems with the homeless era. And we'd like to say that whatever happens to you next, you go finish your college, and then you'll see what happens after August. And whatever that is, God bless you. We'd like to ask all of you to come back and join us next week. I'm Richard Thompson, and peace be with you on behalf of Austin Metropolitan Ministries.